What's going on, everyone? Welcome to another edition of Back Your Play with Q. As always, I'm your host, Rich Quinones, hashtag BYP. Check out the YouTube channel, Rich Q on Q. We are almost in the dog days of summer, if you will. Mid-May, we got the NFL schedule release, which has already been leaked out. We got the NFL draft that we got to recap with our good friend, our NFL Insider Lloyd Vance, kind enough to join us on a Thursday edition of BYP from our good friends over at Play It Again Sports, 1450 Clemensburg Road in Deptford, New Jersey. All right, so everything's starting to leak out, right? See, the funny thing with the schedule is we know who these teams are playing. It's just a matter of unpackaging it out of the box, so to speak. But we'll get to that in a couple moments. Let's get into the NFL draft, which is come and gone. And I know everyone waits to kind of give the grades, so to speak. But let's kind of take a step backwards for a moment, Lloyd. Any surprises? Were you a little more shocked with some of the quarterbacks going as fast as they did? You're thinking about this, right? 10, 11, 12 rounds in. And I think it kind of allowed other teams to go after the players they wanted to that weren't quarterback needy.
Yeah, Q, there were a couple things that surprised me. Definitely three quarterbacks going the first four picks. I thought maybe the first two picks would be quarterbacks. And Houston really surprises you by jumping back in and getting a defensive player that they wanted as well as a quarterback. So, there was that movement at the top. And we had talked going into the draft that this class, it was not that stellar group, in terms of top to bottom, but there were some gems in there. And you saw a lot of teams making moves, a lot of trades, teams moving up and down the board. And as you're saying, Q, they saw a player, they saw a need, and they were willing to invest and make some quick trades to kind of jump to the spots that they need to. So you talked about the Eagles, what they did. I thought they did a great job in terms of, Harry Roseman in the past, I've always said he kind of got too cute, kind of grabbing guys that in slots where they really shouldn't have been taken, the Jalen Reagors, the J.R. Sager-Whiteside type picks. And he's just not doing that in the recent years. He went right out. He had a game plan, and he went after the University of Georgia, the national championship team, which I think, let's face it, the SEC, they had about 60% of the players taken in the draft. And this is the NFL's minor league. So he went there and he went to the top league and grabbed the top players out of Georgia. And I thought the Eagles did a good job. We can get into some of the other teams, but definitely the movement is surprising me because Q, you remember back in the day, most of these guys weren't trading draft picks. They were just kind of standing pat and just waiting to see what happened to fall.
Correct. No, 100%. So, not a shock, right? So Young goes first, Stroud goes second, Anderson goes third. Houston had that back-to-back. Anthony Richards, we talked about his skill set, the mobility. And then it gets a little interesting, right? When you look at Tyree Wilson, then Robinson, we thought maybe if he was there at number 10, we had this conversation, if Robinson's there at 10, if Jalen Carter's there at 10. But once the Eagles jumped Chicago, and I think they gave up a fourth round pick, right? How he worked his magic. You knew that Carter was sitting there. And this is something I asked you about a week plus ago prior to the draft, a couple of days prior to it. If Carter's there, do they grab him? And the conversation's been all about these red flags. And you can never go defensive tackle, depth-wise. You can never have too much at the line. And then the Eagles come right back, and what do? They pull the other kid, and, listen, this is what they do. I mean, they go and they grab Smith, the outside linebacker from Georgia. So you got two big-time game wreckers and playmakers in the top 31 picks in the first round. So I thought a very good draft by the Philadelphia Eagles. How about just the rest of the NFC East as a whole? I mean, if we can start there. I mean, what were your initial reactions to what the Giants did?
Sure. The Giants, I thought, had a solid draft, in terms of grading. You probably say it's in a B range. You know me, I always say give it 2 years and then you'll kind of see who the players are. But the Giants, they've almost laid out the formula way back in the day, 2007, when they had about 7 rookies come in that were drafted and stepped in and helped that team win a Super Bowl. So you're seeing a lot of teams do that now, where they want these young guys to hit the ground running. And, it's all around the NFL. It's a copycat league, so it's very prevalent. So I thought they did a good job in terms of getting guys that can come in and help them right away, whether it's on special teams or nickel packages. Particularly, you have Deontay Banks.
Yep.
They took him at 24. He's good, solid corner cover of the Big Ten. He's going to slide right in there, probably in their nickel package, a guy who's going to be able to help out there. Offensive line, we talked about it over the years, Q, that, Daniel Jones has just been getting hit way too much. And they go in round 2, they get a nice center out of Minnesota, John Michael Schmitz. And then I really like their third player they took out of Tennessee, Jalen Hyatt. This kid's a pure burner. So, they need somebody on the outside. They have not had that elite receiver, a guy that, since Odell left, and they need a guy to come in there and kind of be the cornerstone of this group. Hyatt had a very good season last year. Yes, he's mostly go pattern runner at this point in his career, but he can add some explosiveness to that offense that they need at the wide receiver position.
Yeah, the one thing with the Giants, they swapped picks with Jacksonville to pick the defensive back, Banks from Maryland. So I guess maybe you can argue they felt that Jacksonville was going to pull the trigger on this pick. But if that was the case, why would the Jags then trade down? Again, look, they went line. They also had to go to get a wide receiver. I want to go back a second with the Eagles because I jotted this down. So if you think about this, the first 2 rounders, right? So the 30th pick, they select Nolan Smith. They drafted Carter. So they came into this draft in, I think you can argue, holes on that line. I don't want to say deep trouble, but guys were getting older, but the rotation, the depth is always there. So I think, I guess the point is Chicago, if you think about this, right? They had a really good pick, the Eagles. Dallas will find it much harder as teams will to run the ball. Same with the Giants and Washington. Chicago won offensive line with the next pick. So if you think about it, did the Eagles get fleeced out of a 4th rounder, or, was it just Howie really adamant that they wanted that playmaker in Carter? Because again, we always talk about assets, draft acquisition, draft assets, how teams are reluctant to give up draft picks. We praise Howie, and look, it's just a 4th rounder, but I'm curious. I felt Chicago was going to go offensive line anyway. So to me, they must have really have felt this sense of urgency, right, to draft Carter.
Yeah, that might have been some kind of smoke screen. Somebody from Chicago may have said, you know what? Yeah, we like Carter. We may take him here. We'll never know. But, I thought it was odd that they jump up one spot and grab him because I did think that Chicago was going to go offensive line and try to fix that. And he ended up getting Paris Johnson coming from Ohio State. And the thing is, the Eagles, Jalen Carter was our guy. They had him in for multiple visits. They did a lot of background checks on him, did all their homework on him. Obviously, you talk about some of the red flags off the field. And, he's a game wrecker, though. He's a guy, came in, he was a 5-star recruit, lived up to that. He was just dominant in the college game. And if you want to see it, go put on the tape of Georgia and look for number 88. I mean, he's all over the play in the backfield and at the line of scrimmage. So he's a dominant player. I'm not going to say he's Warren Sapp, but I remember Warren Sapp coming out of the University of Miami, had a lot of red flags, and teams kind of took a step back from him. And they kind of were sorry after they saw the way he just transformed that Tampa Bay Bucs team. So, Jalen Carter is that type of player. I've talked to a lot of people out there. They're saying his legal issues will kind of cool down. Drew Rosenhaus is his representative, so he understands the ins and outs of the National Football League, and they're already working to kind of, not play things down, but kind of maybe there'll be more misdemeanor or not like felony type of thing where he gets suspended. So I think Carter comes in. Nolan Smith, a guy who you were talking about late in the 1st round, he's sitting there. And we know the Eagles, they like these speed balls in terms of throwing on that quarterbacks, getting that natural pressure from the front 4. And then that allows for the back half to kind of not be, covered so tightly. So they get the heat. And that's what Nolan Smith does. A guy who had 12.5 sacks over his career at Georgia. Yes, he was a little beat up, but he's an undersized guy. Kind of reminds me, they're saying Hassan Reddick, but kind of reminds me more of a Trent Cole, guy who is a pure edge guy. He's not huge guy, but
motor.
He's got that high motor, as you talk about, Q. So the Eagles had 70 sacks last year, one of the tops in the NFL. and they always make that a priority to build up their offensive line and their defensive line, most importantly. So, I know a lot of Eagles fans. I heard from my Eagles cousins, why not Bijan? Why not the running back? But, Bijan went to Atlanta, and I think that'll be a good spot for him there. But the Eagles, their priority all along was fixing that defensive line.
Yeah, listen, you win in the trenches. I mean, that's just a fact. Thursday edition of BYP with Q. Rich Quinones here. Lloyd Vance joined us, our NFL Insider. So you had Buffalo kind of jump over to Cowboys, courtesy of Jacksonville selecting Kincaid. So Dallas was then basically their hands forced, and we see that a lot in the draft. We got to go with plan B. We got to go with plan C. Sometimes we got to go with plan D. A couple running backs go off the board. Wide receivers fly off the board. So it turned into Mozzie Smith, defensive tackle out of Michigan. Look, I mean, if you look at the Dallas Cowboys, we just mentioned it, in the trenches, what was their Achilles heel last year? What was their bugaboo? I mean, teams were able to just run roughshod against the Dallas Cowboys. So I think this was a strong pick. I actually felt, talking to some of my buddies that were Cowboys fans, I thought maybe they were going to go for a tight end, but ultimately you got to stop the run first and foremost, right? Shorten up the field. So I thought it was a good pick. And again, if you're the Cowboys, maybe you send a nice little Christmas gift to Jacksonville for training with the Bills so they can, swipe Kincaid. So if you're Dallas, again, that's I like that pick because you had to start in the trenches, right? We know that their secondary and their defensive backs, they're feast or famine at times. And now there's talk, and I want to get your thoughts on this, that they want to use Parsons now more as I guess you can say more hybrid as opposed to a linebacker, tackle edge rusher. So Dallas, I thought, had to accomplish one goal, and that was to try to solidify their defensive front and try to stop the run a little bit in an NFC East that can run the football.
Right. And, you have Micah Parsons, you have Vander Esch at the linebacker position. So they're making all the tackles, but they were taking a lot of guards and centers, and they weren't clean, as we talk about it. And, you bring in a guy like Maisie Smith. Yes, it's a defensive tackle like him, a two-gapper is not a sexy pick, but this guy's going to help them in terms of allowing those guys behind him to make plays. And then he can collapse the pocket as well and help DeMarcus Lawrence and the other guys get after the passer. So you're right. Dallas was in a lot of shootouts last year, and they have to fix that defensive unit. Yes, Dan Quinn's done a good job in terms of bringing that coaching style that they need, but they still were missing a couple pieces, and they were allowing too many big plays and teams to kind of dominate the line of scrimmage, as you had alluded to. So that was a good, solid pick for them. Dallas, then they did get their tight end, also from Michigan, Luke Schoonmaker. So he's going to come in there and replace Schultz, who went to the Texans, and this is their chance to kind of slide him in there. They did get another linebacker from Texas. They did later on go offensive line, as they always seem to do. Kid from North Carolina in the 5th round is Tim Richards. So, they're trying to build up front. I think the big thing for them this offseason, and you've seen that, it's just trying to clean up their salary cap situation. They just had a mess there in Dallas in terms of future money and all that, and getting rid of Ezekiel Elliott and moving some other contracts around. That's what they've really tried to do. So they have some talent there, but as always, Q, with the Cowboys, it's going to be during the playoffs or bust. So, I think they'll win some games, and it's going to be interesting, but they definitely improved their team in the draft.
And that rounds out the NFC East. The Washington Commanders' 16th pick. They went defensive as well. They took a cornerback, Emmanuel Force from Mississippi State. I mean, I don't think this, again, I didn't watch too much, so I can't comment as much, but I don't think he's a big defensive back, but solid player. Maybe that's a Ron Rivera type of player. You stick them on special teams. They needed to improve. Again, these, when we grade them out, like Carter, you can argue was arguably the most volatile best player in the draft, talent-wise, right? Disruptor. So the Eagles grabbed them. Some of these other picks, aside from the quarterbacks, I think you do have to let shake out, right? We can grade the quarterbacks within a season or two if they're playing. But some of these other picks, DB, tackle, linebacker, you have to wait and see. But Washington decides, let's solidify the defense a little bit. So they go with Force from Mississippi State in the 16th pick.
Yeah, Q. And we talked about this earlier. You want these guys to come in and contribute immediately. And that's how you really grade a draft. I talk about that 2007 Giants team that won the Super Bowl. Think of last year's New York Jets team. You bring Sauce Gardner in, who's an all-pro player, and then you had, 4 or 5 rookies step in and were solid contributors on that team. And that's what you want. So, we'll see how Washington plays out here. But once again, they go defense in their first round. They now have 6 defensive guys that they took in the first round. So, on that defense today. So you're going to slide Emmanuel Forbes in there. That's the Mississippi State cornerback that they got. They'll bring him in. He'll help out in the nickel and the dime. And they also bring in Jartavius Martin from Illinois, another corner. So they're trying to fix that defense. And then they went up front, that offensive line. We know they've had a lot of movement there, guys leaving and just guys that didn't pan out. So with their next 2 picks in the 3rd and 4th round, they brought in some interior offensive line help, which they needed. So, we'll see how this plays out. But obviously in Washington, we have to see how the quarterback position, what happens there. You wonder, do they have enough at the quarterback position? And I was surprised they didn't bring in maybe somebody there in free agency or in the draft at a higher level. So it's going to be either Sam Howell or Jacoby Brissett that's going to have to lead this team. And that doesn't really excite you at this point.
No, but I think also what's happening too is you're seeing teams now, especially in the NFC East or the NFC, knowing what the Eagles are doing, how they're front loading the defense, front loading the offense. All right, we have to combat that, do we not? Or we have to actually be able to score 25, 30 points. I mean, the Giants, I don't know if it's going to be a big time game breaker, but we know what they have weapons wise, offense, right? So, let's turn around and solidify the corners and the DBs because they let a couple players walk. Dallas Cowboys, we got to stop the run. The Eagles can chew up the clock. They can run all this. Washington, we got to figure out a way, solidify the back end of our defense and hopefully get some players healthy. I think a lot of these moves too are predicated upon looking at the NFC East because you have to win games in your division first and foremost. It's an utmost importance. I mean, I don't care if it's 6 or 8 games in your division. You have to at least go 500 or more in your division, right? And the NFC East, it's been owned by the Philadelphia Eagles. The Giants and Washington, they don't win a lot of these games in the NFC East. Dallas will split with Philly. Philly owns the Giants. Washington once in a while will give Philly fits here and there. The Giants own Washington. Point is, you got to be able to win those divisional games first and foremost if you're going to have an opportunity for a playoff push.
Yeah, Q. And they've always said the NFC least, but, the NFC East last year, there was not a team with a losing record, and 3 teams made the playoffs. So, this is a very competitive division. And you're right. What these GMs are doing now, and most of them are young guys, they're looking at their main opponents in their division and are trying to figure out a way how to beat them. And particularly the Eagles right now are sitting on top and they're trying to knock them off the pedestal. Now, we have not seen an NFC team repeat since the 03-04 Eagles. And it's going to be interesting to see if that pattern can finally be broken and the Eagles can win back-to-back division titles. But it's going to be tough for the Eagles because, these other teams, as you're saying, they're trying to develop that blueprint to stop them. Obviously, they're looking at last year's tape. In particular, they're trying to find some way of stopping Jalen Hurts and then slowing down that defense, as I said, that gets so much pressure on a quarterback.
Yeah, let's go around the league for a minute. I mean, obviously the trade finalized Aaron Rodgers from the Packers to the Jets, but then we haven't spoken in about a week or so. Lamar Jackson, they finally hash out that deal. And, we can sit there and belabor the point, well, they went after his weapons and, bringing in Odell and some wide receivers. But part of me really thought that relationship was not going to be fixed. But again, 5 years, $260 million contract week ago makes him the highest paid player in NFL history. You see the money that Jalen Hurts gets, and now Lamar Jackson, 5 years, 260. So without an agent, by the way. So you don't have to worry about the nut on the commission on that for the agent. So, I mean, listen, good for Lamar Jackson. I know he wasn't in attendance for the Ravens volunteer team activities. So, I mean, look, at this point, it's a done deal. He's playing. I just thought the issue with the Ravens is that they need to build this offense around Lamar Jackson. And I don't know, do teams build around the quarterback and his style of play, or do you basically take the quarterback and you try to fit him into that offense?
Oh, that's a good one, Q. And you're always going to say, "Oh, this guy's a system quarterback, like an Alex Smith type." But to me, the majority of NFL teams are trying to get that really high level talent at the quarterback position and then build around that person and work to their strengths. So if I'm a GM, that's what I would do. And with Lamar Jackson, you saw that when he had his MVP season, they were running the ball down people's throat, and that set up the pass. So they need to get back to kind of building that line of scrimmage. I know J.K. Dobbs is coming back from injury at the running back position. Maybe they can get him rolling, and then Lamar can kind of predicate off of that. But if I'm the Ravens, I build that way. Yes, it was good to see them finally get some talent for Lamar, though, on the outside, bringing in Zay Flowers at the receiver position coming from Boston College. I think he's a guy that can help them out and kind of be a security blanket for Lamar. We've seen over the years, Q, some of their receiving core has always been all these older guys, these retreads. So yeah. So now they're trying to build it up around Lamar. And as you know, Q, he got the bag, he got the money. So now the expectations come, but also they're definitely going to try to build around him. And the Ravens, I think they should be, fighting for one of those top spots in the NFC, in the AFC North. That's going to be interesting, that if they can catch Cincinnati Bengals, who always were on the bottom, but now they're on top in that division.
So let me give you some updated. These are Super Bowl odds. Kansas City still sitting at plus 600, Philly plus 850, 49ers plus 950, Buffalo plus 900, Cincinnati plus 1,000. Now, here's where it gets a little tricky. We talked about Aaron Rodgers. We talked about Lamar Jackson. The Jets at plus 1,400. Dallas, I think it's just because of the jersey, right? Plus 1,400. Baltimore plus 1,800. People are starting to get a little more high on the Lions and Jacksonville, plus 2,200, 2,500 respectively. The Giants are plus 4,500. How about Green Bay now with Love? So with Aaron Rodgers, you would probably think around plus 2,000, plus 1,800. Now they're sitting at plus 4,000. Tennessee, arguably a playoff perennial contender, plus 7,500. Again, the quarterback situation. And then Arizona rounds it out at plus 1,800. The point is, we know pretty much year in and year out the 4 or 5 teams that are going to contend and perhaps make a deep run into the playoffs, conference championships, respectively. But for a team like the Jets right now, and for Baltimore, because you re-signed Jackson, the expectation is go out now and win the AFC North, make a deep run. Plus, for the Jets, if you handicap the AFC East right now, you're giving Aaron Rodgers what he wants, right? It's almost like total autonomy. We made the trade. Here's some of the pieces. Here you go. We got a ready-made defense. We need an offense just to get the job done. Do you believe the Jets this year are going to treat the Aaron Rodgers experiment kind of like Denver did that second time around with Peyton Manning when he was much older and he had noodle arm, and it was just like, hey, man, just manage the game? Or do you believe the Jets, to a man, believe Aaron Rodgers, we still have top flight, top tier Aaron Rodgers for the next 2-3 years?
Yeah, Q, I think they're almost going all in like Peyton Manning's first year in Denver, where he threw for, I think, 55 touchdowns.
Yes,
and
MVP.
And he still had it, and I think Aaron Rodgers, I think with this new group of receivers that he kind of believes in, he's getting all the guys on his checklist that he wants. I hear Randall Cobb just signed with them. I think they're looking for him to still not, be in the car, but drive the car. So, he's got Nathaniel Hackett. That's his guy, is his offense coordinator. So he's gotten everything that he wanted, Q, as you were saying. It's going to be interesting. Can he deliver at 39 years of age? And that division is going to be extremely competitive. We think that the Buffalo Bills are going to take a step back, and they've really not achieved the way we thought they would when Josh Allen was ascending. And then we'll see about Miami. Miami has a ton of talent too. on the offensive side, defensively well, and they've been trying to make a big
Quarterback
move.
though.
Yeah, yeah. So it's going to be really fun to watch. But you know, it's the NFL, and we're going to see at least 4 new teams in the playoffs next year that weren't there before. That's happened every season since 1999. And then you probably are going to see a team go from worst to first in their division, which is always interesting to see. So the competition is going to be there, and we'll see how it plays out.
Yeah, and you'll see teams that made the playoffs, I think, take a step backwards. I think one of them is going to be the Giants. I know a little, the schedule release things are coming out, not to hard confirm, but just glossing over. Looks like the Pats will open up at home the first 2 games, Eagles, and then the Dolphins, Sunday Night Football against Eagles to honor Brady. Cowboys and 49ers, that's a week 5 matchup. Jets, Bills, looks like that's going to be a week 1 Monday Night Football, not bad. Yeah, the Giants and Eagles, by the way, 4:30 on Christmas. What the hell are you doing? I mean, you kidding me with that nonsense? Eagles, 49ers, week 13, that's an NFC Championship rematch. So we'll talk a little more about the schedule release next time. But I always find it amusing because everyone bitches, moans, and complains about the Thursday Night Football. But sometimes you look at these games on paper and you think they're good, but come week 4, 5, 6, 7, maybe those teams stink. So it turns around and these are bad games. And I know I've asked you this over the years, but if the NFL, if you gave them truth serum, do you think they would want to eliminate Monday Night Football, Sunday Night Football, or Thursday Night Football? Now, hear me out. Monday Night Football back in the day, your standalone game, right? It was a party, 70s, 80s, and to some point the 90s. It's not like it used to be. Sunday Night Football, if you count London, 9:30, 1 o'clock, 4 o'clock, you're almost footballed out. But yet, it does well ratings. We know that. And then you got Thursday Night Football, short week. The games aren't competitive. But yet, you still have the broadcasting rights and the deals and the packages and Amazon and all this. So, Sunday night, Monday night, Thursday night.
Yeah, it's cute. You're just not going to. Thursday night has become a huge revenue stream for the National Football League, and they're not going to. That's not going anywhere. So, if I had to eliminate one of them, and it'd probably be Monday Night Football. You know, as you're saying, Q, it's just not it's not the panache that it used to be. You know, everybody had to see Howard Cosell and Don Meredith and everybody, and it was a must watch. But now it's kind of taking a step back, and Sunday Night Football on NBC, that people love that one. You know what I mean? You kind of have that little break right before it starts, and then NBC has really made that a top program. The ratings are through the roof. So if you had to get rid of one of the 3, I'd probably say Monday Night Football, and then then the Thursday night probably gets more of a spotlight because Thursday night they still can kind of do some flexing and this and that. I think this year they are going to allow for Monday night some of the matchups to be changed as well, maybe later on, because sometimes that Monday night the schedule gets set, as you're saying. The team seems like a contender on paper going into the season, but by week 13, they're not. They're kind of out of it, and then they're stuck on Monday Night Football, and we're watching. I don't know.
Well,
terrible.
I thought ESPN got an absolute monster, right? So Monday Night Football opening, not hard confirmed, but it does look like, we wait for everything to officially come out via the NFL, but it is being posted. You got the debut of Aaron Rodgers at home against your AFC rival in the Buffalo Bills, right? Last year, it was Denver playing Seattle. So you had Let Russ Cook against Seattle. That averaged 19.84 million viewers, which was huge viewership numbers for Monday Night Football. I think this will top it, right? Remember, too, you also had ESPN kind of leaned into, if you think about this, they leaned into the Bucks Cowboys postseason game as far as like a lot of platforms and studio shows. I think they're going to do something similar to that with Aaron Rodgers, at home, Jet fan base, give them some juice, give them something to feel good about. So to me, I think that's a good spot right there to kind of kick off the season, Monday Night Football wise.
Yeah, they're going to have what they'll have at least 2 Monday Night Football games, so it's going to be interesting to see. But the NFL, it's America's addiction. You know what I mean, Q? So people are going to be salivating for these games after a long summer, and not a lot to talk about around the league. So it's going to be fun. And the NFL also, they just moved the NFL ticket package over to YouTube. So that's even more eyes where people don't have to put that satellite on the roof. So, the NFL, like we always say, Q, man, they're printing money. It's just crazy.
I had this conversation with my buddy the other day. I still think we're going to get to a time in the NFL where everything is a la carte. So you can purchase your game. You want to watch the Giants versus Eagles, it's $29. So think about that. $30 to watch a football game stretched over 17 weeks. That's 500 and something odd dollars. That's a lot of money. I'm just using that as an arbitrary number. I think it's such an animal and it's such a beast that I think sometimes it's too much. It's oversaturated, if that makes sense. Like I find myself watching replays. I was watching Giants Vikings wildcard game the other night on NFL Network. I'll watch it because I'm goofy like that. But I think once you get to Sunday night, I think the football fan, the gambler, it's different because they're trying to chase their losses, which they should never do, and trying to win it back on Sunday, double up on Monday, who knows? But I just think the NFL product suffers with Thursday night football because it's a short week. And then there's talk, you had another Thursday night game. So now you have teams are playing twice on Thursday night. I mean, now you got to really stretch the schedule out. You might have to give another bye to teams.
Right.
Logistically, it's a nightmare. But to your point, they get the eyeballs, right? I mean,
They
no
do.
matter what, they get the eyeballs.
They do, and now they're trying to hit Europe. They have more games in London, a couple in Germany, and you just wonder, Q. And we talk about this, the saturation point. Will there ever be too much football? You know what I mean? It's going to be interesting to see, can football continue its ratings and revenue stream that's just been so consistent over years and just been a blockbuster. So, at this point, I was just telling my son, I said, I kind of like playoff basketball, but it just never compared to NFL. It's just never will.
We'll recap the schedule release soon because, like I said, everyone, the wins and the losses, will have fun with that, even though we know it's a moot point. But we'll start to look at some win totals, and then we'll continue looking at the NFC as well. Then we got to break down the AFC division by division, team by team. Lloyd Vance at Lloyd Vance, our NFL Insider, NFL writer, researcher, historian, knows the game like the back of his hand, PFWA award winner, former ESPN NFL contributor. Give him a follow on Twitter at Lloyd Vance. Always kind enough to join us on a Thursday edition BYP with Q. Appreciate you, Lloyd.
All right, Q. Thanks for having me on.